Okay, so moving forward here, we're going to do image number 2. So as I said, we're going to open this. So go File, Open. In your Drive download folder, which you already downloaded off the website, you're going to go to image 3. I know it seems funny, we're working on image 2, but we're using image 3. Obviously, this photo is like not the world's greatest. It's certainly not a Pulitzer Prize winning photo, but it is a basic photo that has an object that we need to remove out of that photo. That light, that flash stand and flash are quite distracting to the photo and don't need to be there. So what we want to do is we could use very similar to what we did the other day when we removed blemishes. You could use the spot healing brush tool, and I'm just going to do it quick and show you why I don't like to use it. I'm going to duplicate this layer here just by dragging it down to the new layer button. That gives me 2 versions of it, and I can turn off the background one and make sure that I don't wreck our original. If I was to just paint on top of this using the spot healing brush, the way that this spot healing brush tool interprets the data is a little weird. It works similar to the clone stamp tool in the sense that it duplicates things and moves it around, but it creates these weird little wavy blurs and things. So if I just go Control Z and back up, instead of using the spot healing brush tool, we're going to go here and we're going to use the lasso tool or the lasso tool. And we're actually just going to make a selection around this stand and flash. And once you go all the way around and let go, you'll be able to see what I call the marching ants. So it's this little dotted ants that wander their way around your image. And all you have to do then at that point is you can simply right click and you can say fill, and we want to do a content aware fill. And this content aware fill will now look at the background, look at the surrounding area, and it will take out that image. And it does a much better job, I find, doing it like that. Is it perfect? No. But it does a really good job of trying to interpret the data and take out that light stand. Okay, not every photo is going to work, right? We can't just here, let's take out the girl. That's not going to work, right? If I lasso tool around her, because there's too big of a space for the computer to try to interpret, right? So it tries to fill grass where there should be a fence, and it doesn't know what's going on behind the girl, right? Whereas open areas, it works much, much better. So this file, we're going to go File, Save As, and save it as a PSD, but we're going to call this we'll just call it image 2 so we know what's going on. We'll go in order. Really quickly, so you don't get confused, some of you, I think, may have labeled some of your other pictures with different names instead of image 1, image 2. So let's quickly open up your, just go to your My PC or This PC button. Mine, it shows up in my Start menu. I don't know where it shows up on yours, but you can then go there and go to wherever you saved your files. And we want, the one is obviously image 2. If we click on this little display items using the large, notice how they don't show up. The PSDs won't show up as actual images because Windows can't interpret the Photoshop documents. So did I mention the other day about using Adobe Bridge? You guys remember that? Okay. So instead of using Windows Explorer here, let's use Adobe Bridge. So open up the program that is called Adobe Bridge. It should be an orange button with a square BR. And when we go to the same place, so if I go back to my F drive and I go to my ComTech folder and I go to block 3, now all those PSDs that we've been creating, they all start to show up here for me to see what's going on. So I'm going to call this Acne Confidence one that I finished off the other day. If I double click on a photo, it will automatically open up in Photoshop. Whereas if what I tell people to use is the right click and then you say rename. So this would be just image 1. You can do it in Windows, it's exactly the same, but you can't see what the file is. So if you've misnamed it, you'd have to open the file to see what it is. Whereas in Adobe Bridge, we can view the thumbnails of those files right in Adobe Bridge. And you can control the size of those thumbnails. There's a little slider at the bottom here. I can make them really huge. I can slide them down, make them super small. Whatever you need, whatever works the best for your workflow. So this way we get image 1, which is the girl. Image 2 should be the fixed version of the girl standing in the grass. If you don't mind, open up your photo of the John Wall again quick. We're just going to make one little adjustment, or I just want to talk about one thing before we keep this. When you're finished with the girl, you can close that image, obviously. Okay, so open your photo back up again, showing you your John Wall guy. You should have done something similar to what I did here, where you've added the color back into his skin, but you left the hue and saturation layer affecting the jersey color. Okay, so should look something like this. You might have a different hue and saturation. So if I click on this little icon for the hue and saturation, I can now change his jersey color almost any color that I want. I can play with the saturation. I can make it more saturated. But if you notice, I could also make it grayscale. So if I turn the saturation to 0, you get no colors. So that's how they would do, like if you've seen photos where they do the selective color and you get, for example, the lady's like red lips are still red and there's a rose in the photo and everything else is black and white. This is how you would do it. You would do it with a layer mask of a hue and saturation, and then you just turn the saturation to 0 and it still behaves exactly the same as everything else. So I could, if I just wanted the ball to be the only thing that was colored, I could go back here. Because it's a mask, I can put back in the things that I painted out, and I would end up with him being grayscale. And if I do this right, just the ball being the only thing that remains colored. And I think it makes for a pretty neat looking image. Obviously, again, like I've mentioned in the past, you can zoom in using the zoom tool so that you can get a more accurate idea of what you're doing when it comes to painting in and out this mask. So in this case, I want this finger to be back to gray here. So I'm going to come in close. I can use the space bar on the keyboard to bring up the hand tool, and I can drag this along. So I can go over to this side to take out any remaining colors over here. if you missed the previous day, when you want to do the hue and saturation, all you simply have to do is go to the adjustment layers here, select on the adjustment layer you want. So in this case, it was a hue and saturation. This is the original photo. And then you can either take away the saturation completely, or you would be able to change the tone of the jersey, make it stronger, make it, again, less, whatever you're looking for from a tone situation. If you go to Colorize, if you notice the difference between me checking this checkbox that says Colorize versus just hue, when I'm changing just the hue, it's adding a certain amount of this color to the existing color, and it's kind of like it's mixing it. Almost like if you took paint and you started to mix your own custom color. Whereas if I click Colorize, notice now everything is a consistent color across the board. So if I wanted to just sort of change it to a specific color and not have a mixed color, I could also do that. So maybe I wanted to create like kind of a moonlit picture. So now everything looks a little bit different. Instead of it being a true black and white, right? I can play with the amount here, and then I could still have this mask that I already created from before, and I could actually add it into, oops, that did not work. Oh, sorry, I have to copy this. I can go to this hue and saturation, and because I've already made the mask using it a little bit differently, all I'd have to do is fill this in with just black. So in this case, it's the background color, but I could just fill it with black here. And now if you look, now it has a purple ball and everything else still has color. Or what I could also do is I could invert this selection, and now it just selects just the ball. And so now when I fill it with black, the ball goes back to orange, and I'm left with a neat looking photo where I've been able to control the entire color of him as if he's, like I say, as if he's standing under a really blue light, and I can change everything together, as opposed to this way. Now I'm only changing just the jersey colors or the color of the ball. Okay, so once you've finished being creative and you've either got the jersey completely done, or if you want to go with the black and white look with the ball, you might need to add a few things in. We're going to save this now as image 3. So go File, Save As, Image 3. And now we are off to the races. We'll get image 4 started up right away. So now that we are finished images 1, 2, and 3, we're going to move on to image 4. So if you're finished with image 3, you can close that down for now. We don't need it. We're going to go File, Open. And again, from our Drive download folder. This time we are going to open the 6877630 summer landscape photo. Okay? Should be a nice big picture with a big huge fluffy tree in it. Similar to the previous tutorial, we are going to cut out this tree. There's a few different ways that we could do this. Obviously, the first one being using the lasso tool and going around it kind of sketchy like this, right? Or what also sometimes works really well is using the quick selection tool. So if we use the quick selection tool, we can quickly select the tree and most of its leaves in a little bit more accuracy. Now it may jump, your tool might jump outside and jump like that to the sky. All you have to do is hold the Alt key on your keyboard, and while you're clicking, it'll minus away from that quick selection. So what I found with things like this, where there's branches or there's weird little bits and pieces that are kind of sticking out, what sometimes works really well is to just blindly kind of go way outside, and then when you bring it back, it will sometimes jump. It'll do a better job of jumping to the edge of those branches or whatever you're trying to take out of the photo. Okay, and then similar to the previous example, all we have to do is right click, and we are going to fill this, and we are going to use a ContentAware Fill. And when we do that, it should magically disappear our tree, and we can deselect this now. So Control D gets rid of those marching ants. Now, if you notice, it didn't do a perfect job, right? Everyone would agree it's kind of a little bit sketchy looking, and it doesn't quite look perfect. So one of the ways that we can fix this is by using what's called the clone stamp tool. So it's, what is it here? For the 9th one down, is it? It looks kind of like a stamp, and it says it's the clone stamp tool. Now the clone stamp tool is a little bit funny in the sense that you have to be on the proper layer. The clone stamp tool doesn't work so well if you're not on the right layer. But essentially what the clone stamp tool will do for you is it allows you to duplicate a selected area. So I'll show you a little example here before we use it, because it works better if you see the full thing happening. So I'm going to open up this landscape photo. Everybody agrees we have a tree here, one single tree in the middle of our photo, or well, not the middle, but off to the side, right? The clone stamp tool, what happens is when I hold the Alt key on the keyboard, I can select the center of this tree, and now I have a duplicate version of that tree. So I could literally move over here and click and basically grow another tree. But I could also do the same thing if I go Alt, click. I could make a series of trees simply by moving along. Now I have to keep selecting Alt, because if I don't, in the original photo there was nothing here. So when I move my mouse over, it's trying to duplicate nothing. So wherever your cursor is, that you start your cursor, so if I click here and go Alt and I click up at the top, now I can actually add in another set of clouds, and it will duplicate exactly whatever the plus sign is over top of. So in this case, I could come down here, and it's not lined up, so I can't directly copy this tree. But if I hold Alt and make a new selection, I can now copy the tree over here again. Okay, so we're creating multiple different objects basically by using essentially a stamp, exactly what it says. So if we take that back to the one we were going to fix here, and I select Alt somewhere along this horizon line that's properly done, so this is somewhere where I like. So if I hold Alt and I select here, I can now move down my image and click a couple times, and it will blend that horizon in, and it'll make it seamless. It'll take out the shadow. It'll take out the little bumpy bits. I can do the thank you. I can do the same as well in the clouds here. I can alt click. I may not want such a giant brush, but I can now click and move bits and pieces of the sky to fill in these little awkward things. Now, obviously, you don't want to take a piece of blue sky and put it where blue sky shouldn't be. You need to make sure that you're taking a bit and pieces of white or whatever will help blend it in the best. So try using the clone stamp tool there. It's a really cool tool. It allows you to duplicate things and move things along to get rid of different objects in your background. So now for starting with image 5, we're going to bring in another picture, and we're going to start doing a little bit of a miniature composite, or bringing multiple images together to create one new image. So if we go to File, and we're going to say Place Linked, we're going to place this image 2637. So it's a picture of a girl on a white background. Now, obviously, not every picture that you use will be nice and clean like this and have a white background and be easy to cut out the photo, but this particular one seems to work pretty good. So when you bring this in, keep in mind that we're going to just scale this down a little bit. So don't make it so big. We need to just shrink her down. We want it to look a little bit funny, but not like she's some sort of giant Sasquatch kind of crazy person. So size it something relative to this so that it looks like she's somewhat proportioned to the picture. It's never going to be perfect, but do your best. Now keep in mind, when you're scaling her, you want to do it from the corners, and you want to hold the shift key. You don't want to mess up the proportions of her body. If I pull on the side, it makes her really wide. If I make her like this, super skinny. Similarly, I can stretch her and make her really tall or really short. All of those kind of mess with the proportions of the original photo. So make sure that when you do your file place, that you hold the shift key and you bring it down from the corner to maintain that proportion, to make sure she doesn't get squished. Once you have her placed in there in the right place, feel free to hit the enter key, and that will confirm your selection. You can also hit the check mark at the top, and that will do the same thing. It will confirm where she is. Okay, so here we going. So now that we have the image placed into the position that we sort of want it to be put in, we're going to take out the background of this girl's layer. So of the image that we just placed into the image, we're going to take out the background. Now, the easiest way that I know of is to, again, use the quick selection tool. So we want to select the girl, her hair, and obviously her feet and arms and all that kind of stuff, but try to avoid selecting the white. Now, what's going to work great is if we zoom in just a little bit. So take your zoom tool, the magnifying glass, and we just want to zoom in on her so that she kind of fills up the screen. Doesn't have to be crazy close, but enough that you can see her and the white background and sort of see what's going on when you're working here. And then we're going to take the quick select tool. So this fourth one down is the quick selection tool. And simply make sure that you have a reasonably good sized brush, but not super huge, right? You don't want it to be bigger than the size of her leg. And if I select here, the quick selection tool will see that this is all generally the same color. It's all black, and it will select that for me. And then I just go up to her toe. It selects her whole foot, the yellow on her pants, and then subsequently I just keep moving around the image, selecting the different parts. Now, where it gets a little weird is on her hair here, because I want to get all of the strands and individual fibers of hair as best as I possibly can. So I'm actually going to select a little bit extra of the hair and kind of be a little bit outside that shape. Now I don't need all of this white in here, so I'm going to hold the Alt key and take a little bit away, come around here. But if you notice, now I've got nicely selected the hair as well as the full hair that's flying in front of her face. Okay? The next step is to refine this, is to make this selection even better, even more accurate. So we're going to click the tool at the top here. There's a button that says Select and Mask. Okay, so once we've done our generic selection, we go to the top and we say Select and Mask. When we do that, it brings up this new set of tools on the right-hand side. So we can very easily select this transparency slider and see what did the original look like, and then what is it going to look like when I get rid of the background, just by sliding this back and forth. Okay? Now I'm doing the view that shows it on a what's called an onion skin, or like a transparent layer. You can have different views. Personally, I don't see how these are more beneficial. I like the layer, either the onion skin one or on the layers just as it is, so that I can see accurately kind of what's going on, right? Whichever one of these is your preference, you're more than welcome to use it. I'm going to keep with the onion skin one. And I'm going to leave my transparency set to 100 so that I can see what the finished image will look like. Okay? If you notice, there's a weird kind of white glow around her body still. We want to get rid of that. So we're going to go into edge detection and drop this arrow down. And we're going to give this photo what's called a smart radius. So this smart radius, when I check this off and I bring up this radius a little bit, say to 10 pixels, it's just going to smooth out where we made that selection. So if you notice, that weird kind of glow has now gone away. The Smart Radius tool and this edge detection here are really good for people with hair, or just in general for bodies and things, to take them out, because it does it in a smooth, controlled manner. Okay? Now, if you look on the left-hand column, there's 5 different tools here. There's a magnifying glass. So in this case, I'm going to use this zoom tool to just pop in a little bit closer so I can see what's going on with this troubled area here, where we've got the white around her hair kind of sticking out still. And then I'm going to use this tool called the Refine Mask tool. And what this tool does, it's really cool. If I click, I want a bit of a bigger brush. So I need a brush that's big enough to kind of go around the front of her face and in around this area. And if I click outside of my current selection, so somewhere where I've already said I don't want this color, and I start to click and then paint over top of her hair, the computer will actually say, oh, he wants to get rid of more of the white. So when I click here to start, and now as I paint, it gets rid of all that white distraction color that's not supposed to be there. And then I do the same thing in the front here. I'm going to take that and I'm going to click in front and I'm going to paint out all the white around the front of her hair, over top, and in by her arm. So now I get a much, much, much cleaner selection that doesn't have any issues to it. The last sort of step in this area or in this picture, what to do is to just quickly double check it. Make sure that you have no other hidden areas that have disappeared or that it looks weird. Okay. I'm now going to go to the output settings here. And I want to output this to a new layer with layer mask. Okay, and when I output this to a new layer with layer mask, when I select this option, and then I select OK, it will now pop back into my regular editing area. Whoops, not the one I wanted to click on. It will now pop back into my regular picture, but if you notice, I now have no background around her, and I've got a nice new layer that's been created with a layer mask that I could make adjustments to if I needed to down the road. I'd be able to make more adjustments. Okay, so I will leave it at that for today. Class is going to be done in like 2 seconds here or whatever. So we're going to stop recording and stop this for today, and then we'll finish it up tomorrow.